Cool. We're going to kick off this conversation here in just a few minutes. I see a bunch of folks trickling in, so want to give some folks an opportunity to jump on before we kick off the conversation today. So um, give us a few moments here, and we'll get started. Okay, guys. Yeah, we're going to start here just at 102. So in another 60 seconds, we'll kick off the discussion. So appreciate everyone jumping in on time today. Okay, cool. Let's dive in. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to join the discussion today. We're pretty excited about this conversation. We've got some pretty valuable perspectives from the industry here with us to get into kind of job costing and how expenses are managed in the field. And I think there's a lot of really valuable perspective on the call here with us today with the underlying goal of like understanding like how these processes have evolved over time, where are there opportunities to optimize, and make sure you're kind of getting a grip and really understanding kind of all of the costs that are happening kind of through these disparate programs you might have in place, and getting a good pulse as to what's happening in the field. Without further ado, I'm Phil Mirasola. I lead partnerships here at Coast. We'll kind of go into a little bit more detail about who we are and what we do. But I want to kick it over to the other guests on the call to introduce themselves before we jump into the conversation.
Awesome. I'll I'll start on my side. Super excited to be here. My name is PJ. I'm from our solutions engineering team over on the BuildOps side of the house. I work with a lot of our customers during the pre and post sale process to really evaluate, look at BuildOps, analyze your business, and figure out areas of improvement. My background's in MEP design engineering and controls, so been a design engineer, tech, and ultimately kind of an operator in small projects PM. So very familiar with this space, very familiar with the industry, and of course, very familiar with the product. Love working with the Coast team and super excited to hear from Will today about all of the areas that Coast and BuildOps, of course, have impacted Excel services. I'll
Cool,
pass it
Will.
to Will as well.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Again, it's a pleasure for me to be here as well. My name is Will Coburn. I am the Director of Accounting with Excel Services. We're a commercial MEP contractor and service provider in the Louisville, Kentucky area and the surrounding region. In my role as Director of Accounting, I oversee IT, which means I also oversee both all the accounting function as well as our technology and system integrations, such as the one we're here to discuss today between Coast and BuildOps. To kind of give some flavor for my experience with this, we have been live at Excel on BuildOps for the past 2 years and Coast for, I believe, just over a year. So excited to be here and share what my insights.
Thanks so much, Will. Sweet. PJ, you want to give a little bit of a high level for the folks on the call that might not be familiar with BuildOps yet or are evaluating potential options in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. BuildOps, as you can see all here, is kind of what I call an operational ERP. So everything from your first touch point for an opportunity, whether that comes from the sales and CRM side, tracking that opportunity, scheduling activity, meetings, site walks against that opportunity, ultimately converting that into work, potentially generating that quote, performing the work, scheduling, dispatching, work order management, making sure that all of the cost is hitting that work order directly from the mobile application and technician's view, all the way back to the office, where of course you're able to review that work, bill for it, and then view really detailed metrics as to how you've performed on that job and across jobs and by any different type of selection or delineator you choose to measure in your business. It really is your operational tool that bolts on to an accounting solution to enable your field teams to have a dedicated tool and solution built for them by folks just like them. So as you can see, a little bit of a graphic here, just kind of illuminating the fact that we do both field service management and project management, and of course both sales and CRM on top of that. All the different areas and components of those workflows are shown, and then of course have AI and financial workflows kind of embedded all throughout. So just a very neat tool for commercial self-performing contractors to really leverage to bolster their operations.
Sweet. Appreciate that. And then, yeah, really quick from the coast side, um, we have built a purpose-built solution in the corporate card and expense management world, designed for contractors, right? And the workflows and use cases that are really unique to your guys' industries. And so, if you're out there in the field and you've got a bunch of techs and they're hopping in and out of vehicles and they're making purchases on the go, and you have some, expenses tied to overhead, you have some tied to projects and jobs. How do you track that effectively? How does that flow back into the system of record? And how are you getting visibility into the spend to hopefully control cost, and drive efficiency on your corporate card transactions? And so, we won't get into the nitty gritty details here, but the way you can think of us is a modern corporate card specifically tailored to your guys' industries. Laser focused on kind of the workflows and use cases that folks like yourself are running up against every day. Cool. So I really want to spend a majority of the time we have here together today, kind of diving into Will's experiences on the front end, PJ's experiences, working with contractors and folks like yourselves, to get some perspective on like a really critical piece of a lot of your business, right? And so, yeah, PJ, first for you, like you talk to a ton of contractors all the time. When we, discuss this concept of job costing, like why is reliable and on-time job costing so important and critical for the business?
Yeah, it's a great question and something I know a lot of contractors are trying to get to, but due to current systems may not be there. I always like to say at a macro level, it allows you to understand as an owner, president, manager, whatever role you sit in, where you're winning and where you're losing in your business, giving you the information and ability to adjust as needed. If you're estimating repair and replacement work on the service side at a 30 to 40% margin, but when you run the financials, your true gross is closer to 10 or 15. Why is that, right? It could be a myriad of different factors, but often it's attributed to missing information from the field, things like truck stock, equipment usage, or receipts from the supply house, inaccurate estimates, reworks, callbacks, all of the above. Job costing allows you to dive into the details and uncover each of these issues, including the trends associated with them, like inefficiencies by job type, technician, customer, any other factor here, really providing you the data to make informed decisions.
Super helpful. Really interesting perspective. And Will, from the operator side, would love to hear a little bit about your background. As you've been kind of in your role at Excel Services, like what were some early challenges that you faced when trying to, get a grip on expenses in the field, job costing, things like that?
Sure. I would say like the highest level of that would be just improper cost code application. So, that's if you summarize it all into one, it'd be that. But, why were we having those issues? Well, we just had far too many purchases from too many different angles. So official purchase orders coming from our purchasing department We'd have will calls for foremen or technicians going to supply houses, doing counter pickups. We'd have credit card purchases with multiple different credit cards, like we'd have WEX for fuel or a corporate card for making purchases of material. And then kind of, again, building upon that, just the sheer number of accounts we would have. So we have a Lowe's account, our WEX account, our Home Depot, Amazon, and each of those has their own statement, their own account, their own billing cycles, on top of all of the actual trade material suppliers we have with like our supply houses. So you can kind of see that there's a lot of complexity here, and we're getting it so much fragmentation, just trying to complete work in the field. So ultimately what all those kind of contributed to were we'd have delays in expense reimbursements or reconciling credit card statements at the end of the month so that we could then post transactions to our job costing system. So we're like a month behind in some cases because we wouldn't get data up front until we got the statement and then tracked it down to reconcile the statement. So all of these like operational efficiencies impact work on the out in the field and the operations is doing, but none of this really even gets into touching what I focus on the accounting side, which is just getting each of those angles, each of those various forms of field purchase into our actual accounting / project management system. This would require work like manual journal entries, manual bill and PO creations, multiple manual reconciliations of statements. So all of this kind of chaos put together contributes to, revenue expense timing issues, especially for service work, like you guys were talking about earlier. We want to hit things quick and hard, so we bill our T&Ms properly. And on the project side, each of these led to delays in our ability to generate a timely WIP for revenue recognition, ultimately all pushing, having an impact on pushing out month-end close, pushing out when we can provide statements to leadership. All of that stemming from one component of the business being field material orders. So, no small challenges there.
Yeah, no pain around that at all, right, Will? It sounds
Right,
like
zero.
It's making my head spin just hearing about all those vendors and folks that you have outstanding bills and statements to, just kind of even recognizing where all of those are
Right.
on a monthly basis. It sounds like a nightmare in itself, let alone, actually tracking those expenses back into your ERP and back into your project management software is, that's a massive undertaking. I don't think you're alone in that either, as well.
Right.
From
I'm sure
speaking to a
not.
lot of
Yeah.
folks, there's always one more account, there's always one more place that they need to buy, and this stuff gets added pretty frequently. Cool. Yeah. So PJ, right? Like when we talk about field expenses not getting captured in real time, and Will kind of touched on some of the challenges that stem from that. But like, what actually happens downstream, as it relates to the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we we just all heard, the the myriad of different ways that Will's being impacted by that today, right? But I think cost really only comes from the field in a couple forms: labor, truck stock, equipment usage, and then purchases, right? And for a lot of contractors, one of the biggest sources can be these purchases that are made by techs while they're out on the road. When these aren't properly tracked or getting back to the office in a timely manner, it leads to a bunch of issues like incorrect job costing, overstated profits, mystery expenses. Where did this come from? Where do I need to allocate it to? Was this on a job or not? Delayed billings, of course, kind of decreasing cash flow, or even in the worst case, missed billings, right? Hey, we want to get this invoice out and I'm in a hurry to send it out. Well, maybe I don't have an expense and it doesn't come in for a week, 2 weeks, or even worse further. And then of course, now you're not billing for everything you even used out on site. So while these expenses are they matter, they're typically smaller than labor, they're not insignificant. And if they're not properly handled, they can lead to a lot of lost revenue, right? To the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars at scale. I hope my old Siemens PM isn't on the call here today, but I can't tell you how many RIB UNC relays I gave away for free as a tech when I was with them. And it's things like that that you just purchase and you don't really remember to add, that it adds up, right, over the course of a year.
Yeah, it's incredible insight, right? And I think like we have a tendency to like look at these things at very small scale, and kind of brush over them as there's bigger problems, bigger issues to handle. And those one-off purchases on the card may not be seen as significant, but you're absolutely right, and I think Will would attest to it too, that this stuff adds up and it adds up quickly. And so yeah, you guys both kind of touched on it, but and Will, you mentioned, all of the accounts, but I'd love to just drill into a little bit more detail, like on the field purchasing workflows,
Mhm.
and how that was handled previously, either before you got there or, in your early days. And then like, what does that look like today? And what were some of those process changes you made?
Sure. Yeah, well, buckle up, everyone. Previously, again, this is all prior to our adoption of BuildOps and Coast. So, previously field purchases were handled in a couple different ways. So, if the field technician had a credit card or we had an account with the store, typically places like Lowe's and Home Depot, like I said earlier, the field tech would go to the store and purchase any of the materials they needed. However, sometimes the foreman or field tech would call our purchasing department and get a PO number, since maybe they were like, "Oh, this is an emergency. I've got to just drive to the supply house right now because I need it today." And they would call the purchasing department and say, "Hey, I need a PO number so that I can give it to the supply house when I get there, so they can fulfill it for me, and we get billed." But when those scenarios happen, it's not like the field foreman or field tech is able to communicate with purchasing in a timely manner of, "Here's all the stuff I'm getting." They're just like, "I'm going now and I'm going to buy some stuff. Give me a PO number." So essentially we're given a blanket PO, and ultimately, until we got the invoice in, we wouldn't have any idea of what material or the ultimate cost or how that job costing should go. We wouldn't have a cost code with it. I will say worst case scenario, I hate to say this even happened, but we sometimes prior PO numbers would be used. So a field tech knew that they had a PO number from a prior job. They would go to a supply house and use that PO number because it worked before, and they don't understand the concept of importance of PO numbers. Maybe they just know that I need that to get work done, and they want to get work done. Wow, does that have major difficulties down the line, because we suddenly have a PO that is over expensed, if you will, and then we find that it's not really for that PO. So I've got to track down with the foreman or the PM or the field tech. Okay, where does this really go? And again, just all this chaos and extra steps had to take place on top of, again, getting receipts and job numbers or cost codes weeks later from busy field employees, and then having to, again, manually enter all of those into our accounting and project management system before we could even begin to analyze job performance or WIP review. So just, everything kind of trickles down, right? We had lack of a clean process, clean structure at the top end. So everything at the bottom end, everything got shifted down and delayed, which had, financial impacts, operational impacts, reporting impacts. So today, again, that was prior to our onboarding with BuildOps and Coast. So today, field purchases are much more focused with our projects. And so for those of you on BuildOps, will understand the difference in projects and jobs. So our project purchases, we do everything we can to have those flow through our purchasing department. So field orders aren't made on projects as best we can, because we want to give our purchasing team the opportunity to go out and source from our various vendors to get the best pricing possible. Where our field orders typically are now done on job related, where it's T&M, the service tech doesn't know what they're getting into when they go out there, so they don't really have the ability to plan out a PO maybe. So we're like, okay, on those scenarios, you go out, you diagnose, you figure out what the issue is. You need the ability to go to a Lowe's or a supply house and put something on a credit card. So those are really where we have focused our efforts on what is a traditional purchase order and what is a credit card purchase. And it has made things so much cleaner when it, operates that way, right? So we see things hitting our job costing much faster and much more accurately. We see billings are able to get out much faster on the T&M work, and we don't have the major reconciliation issues at month end to get our projects right, to get our WIP right. So,
hmm Yeah. And it's an immense overhaul.
yeah,
Um, and I don't think it can be understated. But I think like also, what's important for the folks on the phone, Will, is like the tooling that you use to get there. And like I hear from a lot of folks in the industry when we start talking about credit cards in the field and expenses and how they're handled, and some, everything goes through the supply house, and if you need a credit card you call over the phone, and we have these very strict policies in place because we there's a lack of trust, and
yep,
like we totally get that. And I would love, without forcing you to shamelessly plug Ghost here, but like,
sure.
can you talk a little bit about like how you are like enabling those folks in the field to make the purchases they need to do their job without losing that control, right?
Sure.
And kind of how that's managed.
Sure. Well, just flat off the cuff, we are, currently we create roles in Coast, and we govern our credit card spend based upon those roles. So some roles may allow an employee, if they're in that role, to purchase fuel and also materials, while others may only be allowed to purchase fuel. So they, if they took their card to anything that wasn't a gas station, it's going to be declined. On top of that, we also have layers to limit what stores can employees go to. So, we have a pretty strict policy about meals being purchased on our job cards. So restaurants turned off. We have, and then even within their certain, stores like, trying to go off the top of my head, certain supply houses we have not enabled because we truly want those going through on a purchase order, because we have special pricing with those supply houses that don't get captured if bought on a credit card, only gets captured if we buy on a purchase order. And then additionally, each of those roles is assigned a monthly spend limit and a daily transaction limit by cost type, or vendor type, I should say, processor type. So again, they can't, if they're trying to buy fuel 10 times a day, that's going to get flagged and declined at some point, right? Probably after 2 or 3. If they go over their daily spend limit, we get an alert that they were declined because of the spend limit violation. And it comes to the office for whoever is one of the admin on that. And we can go in and, adjust if needed. But again, we're limiting and protecting ourselves so it's not just a free for all that you can just go out and buy blindly, right?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest piece there, right? Is you have the flexibility to kind of manage that stuff in real time. You mentioned, hey, if someone is going to need more spending power this week, right? That's a matter of a couple clicks. But at the end of the day, you set your baseline, you set the rules, and so you're very confident as to who can use that card, where, when, and why, which is a huge benefit to kind of efficiency and moving fast, right?
Right.
We speak to folks all the time, and putting some of those legacy guardrails in place to prevent people from going outside of policy actually creates a ton of friction in the
Yeah.
field for the guys that you need on the job site, right? You need performing that work. So, really, really interesting and exciting to hear. Well,
Yep.
um, cool. PJ, I want to spin it back to you as well. And I think, we're seeing a bunch of questions come in from the chat. So, we're a lot of folks are, interested in kind of your guys' perspective here. So we're going to keep rolling for a few more minutes if that's all right with folks. But Yeah, PJ, would like to like connect this back to like the systems and what you see on your side. When what changes really, right, when field spend flows directly into job costing in real time? Like, what are the actual repercussions or the impacts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard Will say a lot of it, right? More visibility, faster billings, a bunch more. But rather than just kind of reiterating that, I'll share some stories from some of our current customers, very similar to Will, right? A large mechanical shop we work with in Michigan cut their time to bill from 30 days to 4 because of a lot of this, right? Imagine the difference in cash flow because of that. That same shop also used this same data to create a loser list. They quite literally call the report a loser list, right? Where they look and see, hey, why did these things lose? What's the common theme here, right? And that's all attributed to job costing. You can't do it if you don't have that data. And another one we work with, this I think was a fun metric to think about. The year before, kind of build ops and some integrated spend management like a Coast, right? I think they did a little bit over 3 million in revenue with about, they mentioned 31,000 billable hours in the year before build ops. The year after they implemented, they did almost 7 million in revenue with only 32,000 billable hours. So with a 3% increase in billable hours, they saw more than double the revenue, about 130% increase in revenue. And that largely, among a lot of things, but that largely can be attributed to capturing field spend and billing for things they just weren't billing for previously. So as you can see, I can throw out all the neat buzzwords and everything that makes it seem really important, but the impact is real for a lot of customers and of course a lot of contractors in the space.
Really, really cool to see. Yeah, we've been hearing it firsthand since we've been working with the folks over at BuildOps. The real world impact here. So appreciate this story and the color there, PJ. Want to wrap up here with you, Will, on your side. Just would love to know, like, a high level, right? Like, um, what is like, and we've talked about it a good bit, but like, is there any additional impact or insights you would say you've gained from using both Build Ops and Coast outside of the previous stuff you've mentioned?
I mean, man, being put on the spot like that with that. I guess what I would say, I'll kind of cheat a little bit and go back. I cannot stress enough how more efficient it is to work in two platforms that are both modern, that integrate with each other, and are kind of aligned in their goals, right? Both Coast and BuildOps are focused on the trades. They're focused on helping companies, subcontractors, service companies run profitable, efficient work in their own ways. They understand job costing. Um, you know, Thinking back to our prior processes, our credit card provider wasn't it was just our bank card. WEX is fantastic because it helps manage your fleet, but it's not focused specifically on the trades, on the work that we do. So partnering with two systems, with two companies that fully understand the pain points that our field people go through, the accounting people go through, the operations teams, everyone goes through in this industry, it is hugely beneficial to where we are today and how we are going to get to where we want to go in the future.
Super well said. And really appreciate the insight and color there. And I think, with that, would love to open it up to the audience. We've had a few questions trickle in here, and so want to get some of your guys' perspective, PJ and Will, on some of the things we're reading in the chat. And so from Thomas Pittman, and I'm just going to read this out loud, and we can figure out right where this kind of sits from an answer perspective. But um, what about account managers taking customers to lunch? These are not related to specific jobs or projects, but a customer Can we see that in BuildOps, or can we still attach that to BuildOps and BuildOps dashboard for account managers to self-monitor and sales managers to their team? So PJ, is that something you have any perspective on?
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from Will too. Do you guys have budgets for account managers and sales reps, Will? And do you guys pull that into BuildOps to report on that, or do you leave that in Coast? What does Excel do today?
So for that scenario, we would pull that. We leave it in Coast and pull it into Intact, our accounting system, directly.
Hmm.
We don't currently pull non-job cost related transactions into BuildOps. So that's all handled through our accounting system instead. So
Gotcha. Yeah, Thomas, to give you that answer there, I was curious what Will did, but you do have the option if you want to push those and of course report on them in BuildOps. But really, I think the flexibility of Coast and of course with your ERP is that you can generate that reporting anywhere you need to be able to see that spend. And of course, if you want to associate it with a job or project, you absolutely can.
So just a follow up from Thomas there. So you have it linked to BuildOps and Sage both, and that's correct, Thomas. So essentially, kind of the workflow that most people are doing here is they're ingesting all of their job and project information from BuildOps into Coast. They're using that to tag purchases in real time. They're pushing that back to BuildOps for visibility on the job as soon as it's happening. And then they're also taking all of their expenses and they're pushing them downstream to their ERP. And so, from a reconciliation standpoint, right, Coast being the vendor that you owe those bills to at the end of the month, that's the vendor on record. But if you went to Home Depot and made a purchase for a job, I can clearly see that purchase in BuildOps under that job as soon as it's made on the credit card. And so that's kind of the beauty of having all those systems connected. You get visibility in real time in BuildOps, right, where you're managing the project or job, and then also you have that live feed into your ERP like Sage, so that you can manage it effectively. Josh, yes, we can push into Spectrum as well. Cool. There's just a few other quick questions here. Sherry asked, PJ, can you repeat those stats mentioned on the billable hours and revenue?
Yeah, there was a couple I mentioned there. One of them was cash flow and days to bill. So from job completion to getting the invoice out, one of our customers cut that down from 30 days to just four. That same customer, by the way, I didn't say this stat out loud, but also was able to close their entire year in 4 days this last fiscal year. So just an incredibly quick way to get data into your system, right? Not have to wait for everything to trickle in. The revenue one though, this shop specifically, they did about before BuildOps $3 million in revenue with 31,000 billable hours in the
wow.
year before, and after they implemented BuildOps, they actually did almost 7 million in revenue with only 32,000 billable hours. So think they added 1,000 billable hours that year, but their revenue almost doubled in that sense. And so a lot of that, once again, they largely attribute to tracking field spend, gaining efficiencies. There's a bunch of things that contribute to that, but a lot of it is exactly what a solution like Coast is really built for, right? To make sure that you're capturing those things. Imagine how many bills they had to be sending out that didn't include field spend, that didn't include truck stock, that didn't include a lot of the stuff that they were actually using on these jobs. So they were ultimately kind of a labor only billable shop for a while, right? So just a couple quick ones. And Sherry, happy to share a bunch more of those stats, right? They're all across the customer portfolio, and as I'm sure as Will has attested to, it's not siloed to just those few customers that see that impact.
Cool. I've got one more here from Thomas, and appreciate you engaging with the chat here this much, Thomas. And I'll leave this up to you guys to decide who answers. But can you define the difference between purchase order and field purchasing for the group?
I can answer for a BuildOps technical thing, but maybe even before I do, Will. Well, I guess I'll answer from the BuildOps side, right? For me, a purchase order is something you're purchasing from the office, you're getting delivered. I'm cutting a PO, right, and expecting and tracking delivery dates, partial and full fulfillment, etc. Field purchasing, for me, in my definition, is a technician out, going about their day, servicing the sites that they're supposed to do these jobs on, and stopping by a supply house and buying something, or maybe even ordering parts on their own, right? But anything that they are ordering while they're kind of out and on the move. Will, I'll let you define kind of how Excel differentiates those two.
No, I think you hit it on the head, and what I would kind of explain is the why it like kind of matters is because BuildOps is a system kind of in the back end. It tracks those as two different workflows, but also like reporting types, right? So if you run, you can create a field order from the web. You can create a purchase order from the web. If a technician creates a purchase order from the mobile app, it's a field order, right? So that's something we had to learn up front when we first onboarded, was there is that distinction. They matter because if we want to see how many field orders we have in the office, if we're creating those will calls or we're creating those credit card from the field manual transactions, if you will, we need to mark those as a field order, which is not like a tag. It's actually create field order, create purchase order, because that, again, as we get into analytics and reviewing our spend and where spend happens and how we want it to happen and influence things, knowing what was an office generated versus what was a field generated at its crux, its core, is huge for us to know that and document it the right way. So, 100% agree with what you said, PJ. The technical side of it is really where I focus on it. It's a delineation of this and this. We can report on those. So
Awesome.
Fantastic. Cool, guys. I think we'll wrap there. This was awesome discussion. I really appreciate both of you guys coming on here and lending your time and providing some insights for the folks on the call. This is a pretty hot topic. We've had a ton of engagement across Coast customers and BuildOps customers around how they can optimize here, how these systems work together, how they can kind of improve these workflows. And so, just want to leave this with the folks on the call. If anyone is interested in getting some follow-up information that we can share with you on either products, either drop BuildOps in the chat if you're interested in learning more about BuildOps, and we'll have someone reach out with some more information, or drop Coast in the chat and we'll reach out with some more information. But again, really appreciate everyone's attendance today and engagement. We are super passionate about what we're doing here, and I think have been able to kind of work immensely with Will on this, and so can't thank him enough for participating and sharing some of his real world experience.
Great, happy to help.
Awesome. And folks, we will we'll share the recording out. We should have your email information from here, and so we'll make sure that gets into your hands so you can circulate it internally, and we can take it from there. Cool. Thanks so much again, guys. Appreciate all the help here, we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank
Awesome.
you all.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Will.
Yeah, thanks.